The title of the show is Story, and it's really to do with like one of my prime motivations in photography is storytelling. And so each of these, like, this is comprised of several different series. So behind me is the Salvage Mission, which is my most recent series. As well, there's over here is the Go series, and then I've got what I'm calling selected single works. So where I've just done sort of individual photos. Sometimes I, maybe tried to make a series and I thought, no, really works better as just a couple of standalone photos and that's all. So, but yeah, storytelling is what it's all about, as well with my paintings. Part of what I love in a painting is having like a lot of layers and a lot of sort of texture, so you can see that there's a history to the painting. So it's not just, you can't really see the canvas through it because I've put like lots of layers and textures and used different mixed media and so forth. So that's really it's in its own way storytelling. So basically with the Salvage Mission, that came about last year, 2022, because I found out that there was a junkyard, like a car graveyard close to where I lived. And to be honest with you, I can't believe that it took me 12 years to find it. I just came across it on the internet and I noticed that they had a lot of really cool cars and some very vintage cars, and they were all sort of being reclaimed by nature, and I thought that was really cool. So I went out there. The first time I went out there, I took a bunch of photos, and to be honest, it was overwhelming. There was so many cars, and they were all just together, and it was incredibly overwhelming, cool on the one hand, sad on the other, because you really had the sense that these cars all had a life. They were part of someone's life at some point in time, and now they were just like basically left, and they were literally, some of them had trees going through them and being reclaimed by nature. So I took a lot of photos, and I really had no clear thought of what I was going to do with those photos. I just thought, oh, this is cool, I'll just take some photos. And then when I got home, I started looking at them, and I just started experimenting with them and taking individual cars out and putting them into different backgrounds. And then I just got really caught by that idea, because I thought, oh, it's like giving them a final story. So that's what this series is about, and I have a tagline for it, which is everything deserves a final story, because, well, in my mind, it really does. And I just think there's, analogies you can draw to, like, sort of the ephemerality of life, because all these cars are in some sort of decaying process, as we all are, and life is. It's ephemeral, but on the other hand, it's, I think giving it like a swan song in a new story it's just a really cool thing to do. So that's what I was thinking with that. I think what ties them together is that they're part of my story, if you will, because this whole show, including the paintings, are the story of what I've done artistically since the last time I had a solo show at the Abbozzo Gallery, which was 2019. So basically that was in May 2019, and as you know, a few months later, we were all in lockdown in the middle of a pandemic. And so that really, for me, that year, 2020 and beyond, was ended up being like an intensely artistic year, because I had so much time at home and so much, that was really what I did. And so the first thing I did, actually, there's the photo muse, the large photo muse, that's part of a larger series called The Alchemy of Being. And that was the first sort of big series I did during the pandemic. And that series is all about basically the artistic process. And it's very whimsical and very kind of lighthearted, and it's like the opposite of the pandemic, because I found art very much of an escape during that time. And so when I escaped into my world of art, I really wanted it to be light and whimsical and happy, and looking into sort of more the deeper realms of life. And so I think when the pandemic first started, I did a few photos that were a little bit about the pandemic, but that got for me old really fast because I thought, who needs to see photos about it? I want to escape from it. And so that's what I did. Then another thing that happened during the pandemic is I really just started painting. I've always painted for like years and years, but I just started painting with just a passion that hadn't really happened to me before. And I think because I had all this time, and so like every night and all day on the weekends, and especially when we couldn't really go anywhere, I was painting. And so that is, and I thought at one point, well, I wonder what would happen if I found a way to put my photography and my painting together, because they've always really existed separately. And so that's where the Ghost series came out. And that was really interesting to me because the Ghost series is made up of some pictures of women, but they're taken in like with a long camera exposure to give them some blur, because the painting backgrounds are all my own paintings, but they're like, basically I thought, the way to put this together is make it sort of blurry and dreamy. And then it started to become like this whole sort of, the topic was about like, different sort of more esoteric women and like sirens and things that weren't like of this earth kind of thing. And I found that really interesting, that's what came out, because I hadn't really done that kind of fantastical sort of work before. So that was the Ghost series. I can talk about that photo right there. This one is called Home. And I just have to say, I love this photo because one thing I love about the artistic process is when things happen sort of serendipitously. And so what happened with that photo was I decided to go to the antique store. This is 2021. And I had no real like specific thing I was looking for. I just went to the antique store and I looked up on the shelf and there was this dollhouse. And I've always, like, as a photographer, I have this bucket list of props that I want in a photo, and one of them has always been a dollhouse, because I had this idea of doing a photo exactly like that where I was carrying it sort of on my back. And so, but when I looked at it, I thought, I wonder how heavy that dollhouse is. And it was light as a feather. Like, I reached up and it was just like light as a feather. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. And so that subdivision was a subdivision that no longer looks like that. It's close to where I live. And for the longest time, it sat there empty with no houses. And I'd always thought that I wanted to do a photo there. I just didn't have the idea of what I was going to exactly do. And so when I found that house, I thought, there it is. And it all came together. And so that's one of my favorite things, is like when different props, and there was a few others I did. I started to make it a series, but it was one of those series that I thought, actually, there's not enough photos here for a series, but it's good standalone. So that was what I did there. So this painting series is called Sand and Stone. And how it came about is that I knew, because I really had started painting like so much during the pandemic, and I realized that I wanted it to play a much bigger role in my sort of art than it previously had. And so for the show, I wanted to do a series of paintings. And basically what happened was, when I was shooting the cars, I got very interested in the idea of, wabi-sabi and things that were sort of eroding and decaying and looking old, and having a history, basically. And so I thought, I'd love to do a painting series that goes along with that. So originally I started off trying to paint in the same colors as that series, and it wasn't working out. And so I tried and I thought, nah, I'm not feeling it. And maybe it felt too forced or something. It didn't feel natural. So at a certain point, I decided last fall, I thought, maybe I just won't have a painting series, and that's fine. I'll just paint for myself. And so then I started painting, and it was interesting. It was this painting called The Gift. That's why it's called The Gift, because something started to happen with that painting. And painting to me is a very mysterious, art itself is very mysterious, because I think I am a very intuitive artist. I often, especially with painting, go in, I try to do it almost like from an unconscious place. So I might have a couple of ideas of what I'm trying to get to, but I'm really trying to be open and to sort of see what can happen. So I started painting, and that painting, and I call it this process where, and the best way I can describe it is almost like the painting starts to paint itself. Meaning it's not just me going blah, blah, blah. There's like a feeling to it, and I start to get a whole sort of process that happens with it. And so then the paintings just started coming out one after the other after the other. And this is the series that you see here. And it's really to do with, well, I think I said it earlier, it's really to do with like having history, and there's layers, because I love paintings that have that feeling of like roughness and like there's like all kinds of layers and history underneath the painting. So it's not just a surface that you're looking at. So there's layers, and then sometimes I carve it back, and you know, I sort of go over it, and it's just a very intuitive process. I absolutely love painting. So that's what I would have to say about it. It's called sand and stone because a couple of the materials that I actually use in the mixed media are sand and marble dust, which technically is stone. So that's why I called it sand and stone, because because I really enjoy mixed media as well, because it gives that sort of textured, gritty, substantial feel to a painting. And that's it. I think the thing with photos is, especially the photos I do, people engage with it very viscerally, like because it's figurative. Whereas I think that paintings cause people more of a feeling thing. So they don't have as much to say about it, but it causes feelings. And that's what I like about painting, because and when I see a painting I like it because it causes a feeling in me. Whereas I think with photos, they tend to cause more of a, I mean, they cause feelings, but they also have a story with them. And often people will come and tell me their stories when they see photos. They'll come and tell me their story. Oh, this reminds me of myself, and this happened to me, and that's why I like this, because they insert themselves within the story. Whereas when I show people my paintings, or have shown my paintings, exhibited them, people more talk about this causes this feeling in me. And usually it's this similar feelings of calmness and serenity and that kind of thing, which, to be honest, is great, because that's really what I'm doing. Like when I'm painting, I'm kind of like in my own little Zen world, if you will, and it's a great escape. And I think that's why I did it so much during 2020, because it was this place I could go to in my studio that was just like nonverbal, emotional, sort of, and very, very, very calming and soothing. And I think what I love about painting, because when you're doing photography and the type of photography I do, I'm on my computer. And when you're on your computer, you're on your phone, you have like the internet distracting you. Whereas when I do painting, all of that stuff is gone, and I just have music playing in the background, and that's basically it. So, yeah. You know, in a way, I paint first for myself, and all of these paintings, like as I was painting them, I was putting them up in my house. And so, it was like really, it's always such a like, oh, and now I'm giving them away. But that's just how I paint. I can't paint for what I think other people will like. I have to paint for what I like. And then, and then you have to give them away. So, yeah.